Wealthy rancher found a poor Chinese woman in a broken cabin. What he did next stunned everyone. Henry Caldwell was used to the quiet of the countryside. Every morning he rode out on his horse, Dusty, across the wide stretches of his ranch, checking on the fences, the cattle, and the fields that stretched farther than the eye could see. Henry's ranch was famous in the county, not because of its size alone, but because he had built it from the ground up. He had inherited some land from his father, but the rest he had earned with his own hands. Over the years he had become wealthy, but he had never let money change who he was. Henry still wore simple clothes when working, still helped his neighbors when they needed it, and still cared about people, not just profits. It was a late afternoon in early spring, and the wind was gentle, carrying the fresh smell of grass and wild flowers across the fields. Henry was riding along a path he had taken many times before, near the far edge of his property. Usually this path was quiet and peaceful, and sometimes he liked to just ride slowly, listening to the birds and watching the clouds. But that day, something unusual caught his eye. Off the path, partially hidden by trees and tall weeds, he saw the outline of a small cabin. Henry had lived on this land for more than 20 years, and he thought he had explored every corner. Yet, here was a building he had never noticed before. It looked old and broken, with wooden planks missing from the walls and the roof sagging as if it could fall at any moment. Smoke from a tiny fire rose from a rusty chimney, and he could see a faint figure moving inside. His curiosity grew, and he decided to get closer. As Henry approached, he saw a woman standing by the doorway. She looked small and fragile, and her clothes were torn and dusty. Her hair was black and tangled, falling in messy strands over her shoulders. Her face was pale and worn from hardship, but her eyes were sharp, clear, and full of a quiet strength. She noticed him immediately, and for a moment they just stared at each other. There was no greeting, no words, just a pause in time. Henry was not the type to judge people by their appearance, but he felt a deep sense of concern. He could tell at a glance that this woman had been living a hard life. The cabin looked unsafe, with gaps in the walls that would not keep out the cold, and the fire inside barely seemed enough to warm the small space. Yet she had survived here, and that was remarkable. "Hello," Henry said gently, not wanting to scare her. His voice was calm, carrying a tone of respect. The woman looked at him warily, unsure if he was friend or stranger. "I'm Henry. I own the land here. Are you okay?" The woman hesitated, then spoke softly. Her English was broken, but understandable. I am fine," she said, her voice quiet and careful. I have been here long." Henry dismounted and stepped closer, making sure to keep a safe distance so he wouldn't seem threatening. "I can see that," he said. "But this cabin, it is not safe. You should not live like this. Can I help you?" The woman looked down, fidgeting with her hands. No one helps," she whispered. Henry could feel the sadness in her words, but also a quiet pride. She had survived on her own, without asking anyone for help. That was not an easy thing to do. "Maybe you just haven't met the right person yet," Henry said kindly. "I don't want to hurt you. I just want to make sure you are safe." The woman slowly nodded. Her name was Mei Lin. She told Henry that she had come to America many years ago, hoping to find work and a better life. But things had not gone as she expected. She had been left alone, with nowhere to go, and had struggled to survive in the woods and on the edges of town. Her story was simple, but every word carried pain and resilience. Henry listened carefully, not interrupting. He had heard many stories of hardship in his life, but there was something different about Mei Lin. She was not asking for pity or charity. She simply wanted to survive, quietly and with dignity. Henry felt a strange mixture of admiration and sorrow. Here was someone who had faced so much and yet had not given up. As they talked, Henry noticed the details of her life in the cabin. There were a few old pots and pans, a blanket on the floor, and some dry wood stacked for the fire. There were no comforts, no signs of luxury, just the bare necessities to survive. And yet, she had made it work. She had kept herself alive in a place where most people would have given up long ago. Henry felt a sense of responsibility rising inside him. He knew he could help her, and he knew that it would not be just a small act of kindness. It could change her life. But he also knew he had to be careful. Mei Lin was cautious and wary of strangers. She had learned that not everyone in the world was kind, and she had to protect herself. Henry understood this instinct, and he respected it. He would not force anything. Instead, he offered small gestures first. He left a basket of food outside the cabin the next morning. Fresh bread, fruit, and some warm clothes. Mei Lin noticed the basket, her eyes widening with surprise. She did not expect kindness. Slowly, she began to trust him, seeing that his intentions were genuine. Over the next few days, Henry continued to visit, always patient and gentle, never demanding anything from her. He shared stories of life on the ranch, of the animals and the land, and even the simple joys of a sunrise over the fields. Mei Lin began to smile more, her voice becoming stronger as she shared her own stories. Henry could see the spark in her eyes that had drawn him in the first day. She was intelligent, resilient, and capable, despite the hardship she had faced. He realized that this was not just a woman in need. This was a person with dreams, hopes, and potential. And he felt a growing sense that he wanted to help her not just survive, but live fully. By the end of that first week, a quiet bond had formed between them. There were no grand gestures, no promises of wealth or comfort, just understanding, respect, and the gentle presence of someone who cared. Henry had discovered something rare, a person who reminded him of the strength of the human spirit, even in the most difficult circumstances. That first encounter in the broken cabin was the beginning of a journey neither Henry nor Mei Lin could have imagined. A chance meeting, a simple act of curiosity, had set in motion a story of trust, hope, and the power of human kindness. And though the path ahead was uncertain, Henry felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He knew that he could make a difference, and he was determined to do so, one careful step at a time. For Henry, that day in the woods was more than just a routine ride across the ranch. It was the day he met Mei Lin, a woman whose courage and quiet strength would soon change his life as much as he would change hers. The broken cabin, hidden away from the world, had become a place where two very different lives were about to connect, and where compassion would begin to rewrite the story of survival. After the first week of small gestures, Henry Caldwell noticed subtle changes in Mei Lin. The once cautious and wary woman began to show signs of life that had been missing for years. She still moved carefully, but her steps were steadier. Her eyes, which had once darted around with suspicion, now lingered with curiosity. The spark of hope that had been hidden beneath layers of hardship was slowly returning, and Henry felt a deep sense of responsibility, not as a savior, but as someone who could provide a safe space for her to breathe and grow. Henry continued to bring small supplies, fresh fruits, bread, warm blankets, and clothes that were clean and comfortable. At first, Mei Lin was hesitant to accept them. She had learned to survive alone and feared that accepting help meant giving up her independence. But Henry never forced anything. He simply placed the items outside her cabin and left quietly, giving her space to decide. Over time, she began to accept these offerings, and with each gift, a small bond of trust began to form between them. One afternoon, Henry decided to sit by the cabin, keeping a respectful distance. "I can see you've made this place your own," he said gently, pointing to the small details she had managed to organize. Mei Lin looked at him, surprised. Most people who saw her cabin only noticed how broken it was, not the care she had taken to make it livable. She didn't speak at first, but finally said, I... I try. I try my best." Her voice was soft, but there was pride in it, a quiet resilience that impressed Henry more than anything else. Henry nodded. "It shows. You are strong, Mei Lin. You have survived when many would have given up. That's something remarkable." Mei Lin's eyes widened slightly. Compliments were not something she often received. Most people only saw her struggle, never her courage or determination. She hesitated, then smiled faintly, a gesture that felt like a small victory over years of isolation and hardship. As the days passed, their conversations grew longer. Mei Lin shared fragments of her past, her journey from China, her hopes for a better life, and the series of unfortunate events that left her alone in the woods. She spoke carefully, choosing her words with precision. She explained that when she first arrived in America, she had thought she could find work easily, but she had no connections and no family to help her. Doors had closed and people had ignored her pleas. Slowly, the small trickle of kindness she encountered over the years had dried up, leaving her to fend for herself. Henry listened without interrupting. He didn't offer quick solutions or judgments. He simply listened, letting her voice fill the space that had been so quiet for far too long. He realized that for someone like Mei Lin, being heard was as important as any material help he could provide. Listening was a form of respect, and it allowed her to reclaim a sense of dignity that hardship had stripped away. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Henry asked if she wanted to see more of the ranch. At first, Mei Lin hesitated, unsure if she could trust this stranger fully. But something in Henry's tone, gentle, patient, and sincere, convinced her to accept. He led her slowly through the fields, showing her the animals, the barns, and the wide-open spaces that seemed endless under the golden light of sunset. Mei Lin had never seen land like this. The sheer freedom of it, the way the wind carried the smell of grass and earth, made her heart swell with a cautious joy. "You've built something beautiful here," she said quietly. Henry smiled. "It's a lot of work, yes, but it's worth it. And now, it's not just mine. You're part of it too, if you want." Mei Lin nodded, feeling a strange warmth she hadn't felt in years, an invitation to belong somewhere, to be part of a life that was steady and safe. As the days turned into weeks, Henry gradually involved Mei Lin in small tasks around the ranch. She helped feed the animals, water the plants, and even clean some of the barns. It wasn't easy at first. Her hands were soft and unused to heavy work, but she learned quickly, her determination and patience shining through. Each task completed brought a sense of pride that had long been missing from her life. Henry encouraged her gently, praising her efforts without making her feel like she owed anything. It was clear to him that respect and trust were the strongest foundations for helping someone who had suffered so much. Beyond the physical tasks, Henry also introduced Mei Lin to small joys she had not experienced in years. He showed her how to ride a horse properly, how to tend a fire safely, and how to make simple meals using the ranch's ingredients. They shared quiet breakfasts on the porch, watching the sunrise together. Mei Lin began to laugh more, her smile becoming more natural and relaxed. It was a sound Henry hadn't realized he missed hearing, pure, unguarded joy. During this time, the townspeople began to notice. Rumors circulated about Henry spending so much time with the mysterious woman in the woods. Some whispered with suspicion, others with curiosity. But Henry paid little attention. What mattered to him was Maylin's safety, her comfort, and the chance to help her reclaim her life. And slowly, the small community began to see something unexpected. The quiet dignity of a woman who had endured so much, paired with the patience and kindness of a man who saw the value of every human life. One rainy afternoon, when the wind howled and the sky was heavy with dark clouds, Henry found Maylin sitting by the fire inside her cabin, knitting a small scarf. She looked up at him and said, "Thank you for everything. Not just food, for listening, for being patient." Henry sat across from her, feeling a lump in his throat. He had never expected thanks. Her trust was reward enough. But hearing her gratitude so sincerely made him realize how much of a difference small acts of kindness could make. From that moment, a new rhythm settled between them. Each day brought small steps forward. Henry continued to provide support, but he never imposed his world on hers. Maylin began to dream quietly again, imagining a future where she could live with security, learn new things, and perhaps even give back to others as she had received help. Henry encouraged her, gently planting seeds of confidence and hope, knowing that the strongest growth comes from within. By the end of the second month, the transformation was clear. Maylin's physical appearance improved. Her skin was healthier, her clothes were clean and well-fitting, and her hair was brushed and neat. But more importantly, her spirit began to shine. She smiled without hesitation, laughed without fear, and moved with a confidence that had been buried under years of struggle. The cabin, once a symbol of isolation and despair, now felt like a small home filled with the beginnings of warmth, trust, and possibility. Henry watched these changes with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had never seen someone transform so beautifully through a combination of patience, trust, and opportunity. It reminded him why he had chosen to live on the ranch all these years, not just for wealth or land, but to create a place where life, in all its forms, could thrive. And Maylin, with her courage and resilience, had reminded him of something he had almost forgotten. The human spirit is capable of remarkable growth when met with kindness and respect. As winter approached, Henry made small plans to ensure Maylin's safety and comfort. He prepared a small, sturdier cabin on the ranch for her, one that would protect her from the cold and give her a sense of stability. He did not announce it. He simply began working quietly, making sure everything was ready for when she felt ready to move. It was not a gift forced upon her, but an invitation to a better life, one she could accept on her own terms. By the end of part 2, Henry and Maylin had built more than just trust. They had built the first foundations of a friendship that neither of them expected. Two very different lives had begun to intertwine, creating a bond that was as much about mutual respect as it was about care and compassion. And although the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Maylin's journey from isolation toward hope had begun, and Henry was determined to walk alongside her, not as a savior, but as a companion and witness to her remarkable. Spring was fading into summer, and the ranch was alive with the sounds of nature. Birds sang from the trees, the cattle grazed peacefully in the fields, and the warm sunlight painted golden streaks across the rolling hills. For Henry Caldwell, the days had taken on a new rhythm, one that always included Maylin. He had grown used to seeing her in the mornings, busy with chores, her hands moving steadily as she tended to animals or arranged supplies. But more than that, he had grown to admire her quietly. Her determination, her careful attention to detail, and the quiet dignity she carried had touched him deeply. One morning, Henry found Mei Lin near the barn, her hands in the water trough, washing her small set of cooking utensils. She had developed routines, small but steady, and the way she moved reflected confidence and calm. Henry called out to her softly, "Mei Lin, would you like to take a walk? I want to show you something." She looked up, hesitating for just a moment, then nodded. She trusted him, enough to follow him beyond her familiar paths. Henry led her to a small grove near the edge of the ranch, where the ground sloped gently toward a clear, flowing creek. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and the air smelled of earth and fresh grass. "I thought you might like to see this," Henry said. "It's one of my favorite places to think, especially when the day is quiet." Mei Lin's eyes widened, a soft smile forming on her face. She had seen beauty before, but the freedom and peace of this place struck her deeply. For a moment she said nothing, just watched the water ripple over the smooth stones. As they walked along the creek, Henry gently encouraged her to speak about her own dreams. "You've been through so much," he said. "I can't imagine everything you've faced, but I'd like to know what you hope for now. Not just survival, but what do you wish for your life?" Mei Lin paused, looking at the flowing water, her thoughts quiet. She had survived for years without daring to dream, always focused on the next day, the next meal. But now, under the warm sun and with Henry's gentle presence, she allowed herself to imagine something more. I want to learn," she said softly. "I want to read and write well. I want to help others, maybe, one day. I want a home that is safe." Her voice was hesitant, but full of honesty. Henry smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond kindness. He was inspired by her courage. "Then we will make that happen," he said. "One step at a time. You've already come so far, and I will be here to help." Mei Lin's eyes glistened, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope that went deeper than mere survival. Over the next few weeks, Henry continued to encourage her growth in small but meaningful ways. He brought books from his personal library, starting with simple stories in English, then moving gradually to more complex texts. He taught her to read the words aloud, helping her pronounce them carefully, and Mei Lin practiced every day. She was a fast learner, her mind sharp and curious, absorbing knowledge eagerly. Henry watched with quiet pride as she slowly became more confident, her smile growing brighter with each accomplishment. But their life together was not just about learning. Henry also introduced her to the practical work of running a ranch in more depth. He showed her how to mend fences, care for the livestock, and manage the small details that kept everything running smoothly. Mei Lin surprised him with her attention to detail and her willingness to work tirelessly. She took pride in her contributions, and Henry was careful to acknowledge her efforts, always treating her as an equal, not as someone to rescue. One afternoon, while working together in the barn, a sudden summer storm rolled in. Dark clouds gathered quickly, and the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. Henry and Mei Lin hurried to secure the animals and close the barn doors. By the time they were finished, they were drenched, their clothes clinging to their bodies. They laughed together, a sound of pure joy and relief, and Henry handed her a towel. "We make a good team," he said, smiling. Mei Lin nodded, her laughter mingling with his. In that moment, the distance between them felt smaller, and a bond had been strengthened not by words, but by shared effort and trust. As the summer progressed, Henry introduced Mei Lin to his neighbors, small steps toward integrating her into the wider community. He knew it was important for her to feel a sense of belonging beyond the ranch. Some neighbors were cautious at first, unsure about the mysterious woman Henry had helped, but as they saw her kindness, her work ethic, and her genuine nature, Their skepticism faded. Mei Lin quietly began to form friendships, small gestures of connection that made her life feel fuller and more real. Despite these positive changes, Henry also noticed moments when Mei Lin retreated into herself. Occasionally, she would sit quietly by the cabin, staring at the horizon with a distant look. Henry did not push her. He simply sat nearby, giving her space to process her memories and emotions. He understood that healing took time, and that trust and courage did not erase past hardships overnight. When she spoke, he listened carefully, offering encouragement, but never judgment. He realized that her strength came not from forgetting her past, but from facing it and choosing to move forward anyway. One day, Henry suggested they prepare a small garden near the cabin. "Growing your own food can be satisfying," he said. "It's steady work, but it gives a sense of control and pride." Mei Lin agreed, and together they cleared a small patch of land, planting vegetables and herbs. She worked with care, planting seeds, watering them, and tending to them daily. The garden became a symbol of her growing independence, a tangible representation of her efforts to rebuild her life. Watching the plants grow under her care gave her a quiet joy she had never felt before. Henry noticed another change in Mei Lin, her willingness to speak openly about her feelings. One evening, as the sky turned pink and orange with sunset, she confided in him about her fears. "I worry that I am not strong enough," she admitted, "that something bad could happen again, that I cannot belong." Henry placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Strength isn't never being afraid," he said gently. "It's having courage even when you are afraid, and you are stronger than you realize. Look at everything you've done." Mei Lin smiled faintly, comforted by his words. For the first time, she felt that she did not have to face life's challenges alone. Their relationship, grounded in trust and respect, began to attract the attention of local children. Henry and Mei Lin occasionally taught them simple skills: how to care for animals, how to plant seeds, and how to treat the land with respect. The children were fascinated by Mei Lin's stories of faraway places, her patience, and the gentle wisdom she had gained from hardship. She began to feel a sense of purpose, realizing that her experiences, once a source of shame or sorrow, could now inspire and guide others. By the end of the summer, Henry and Mei Lin had created a life that was far removed from the isolation and struggle of the past. Mei Lin had developed routines, friendships, and skills that gave her confidence and pride. She had grown from a woman who barely survived each day into someone who could imagine a future filled with hope, learning, and connection. Henry, too, had grown, not just as a rancher, but as a person. He had discovered the depth of his own compassion, and he had learned that helping someone rebuild their life could be one of the most rewarding experiences imaginable. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Henry reflected on their journey. He thought about how chance had brought Mei Lin to his ranch, how small acts of kindness had grown into trust, and how patience and respect had nurtured her spirit. Mei Lin, noticing his quiet reflection, reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. For believing in me." Henry squeezed her hand gently. "No," he said. "Thank you for showing me the strength of the human spirit, for reminding me why kindness matters." At that moment, the broken cabin in the woods seemed far away. What had begun as a chance encounter had grown into a partnership of trust, learning, and shared respect. The summer had changed both of their lives, teaching them that even the most fragile beginnings could grow into something strong and lasting. And though the future was still uncertain, they both felt ready to face it together, with courage, hope, and a shared belief in the goodness of life. Summer was slowly giving way to early autumn, and the ranch had a calm, golden glow. The fields were full, the cattle were grazing peacefully, and the air carried the scent of dry grass and cool evening breezes. For Henry Caldwell, life had settled into a rhythm he hadn't known before. It was no longer just about managing land and livestock, it was about seeing Mei Lin thrive. Over the months, she had grown stronger, more confident, and more open to the world beyond her broken cabin. But even more than her growth, Henry was struck by the way she had changed his life as well. Her presence had brought a new purpose, a quiet joy, and a sense of connection he hadn't realized he was missing. One crisp morning, Henry had an idea. "Mei Lin," he said, approaching her as she tended to the small garden near the cabin, "I've been thinking. You've worked so hard, and you've grown so much. I want to give you a chance to live somewhere safer, somewhere you don't have to worry about storms, cold nights, or unsafe conditions. Would you like that?" Mei Lin looked at him, surprised. Her lips parted slightly, unsure of what to say. She had learned to be cautious, to distrust offers of help, but something in Henry's calm and honest expression reassured her. I don't know," she whispered. "I've lived here so long. I am used to it, but I am tired sometimes. It is not easy." Henry nodded gently. "I understand. I just want to make sure you are safe and comfortable. You can decide when you're ready. There's no rush." Mei Lin considered his words carefully, realizing that for the first time in her life, she had a choice, without pressure or fear. Over the next few days, Henry worked quietly on a small, sturdy cabin on his main ranch. Unlike the broken shack she had lived in, this one had solid walls, proper windows, and a small porch. It was cozy but safe, with space for her to cook, read, and even entertain neighbors or friends if she wished. When he finally invited her to see it, Mei Lin was overwhelmed. She walked through the cabin slowly, touching the walls, opening the windows, and looking at the small details Henry had considered. It is beautiful," she said softly. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief and hope. Henry smiled gently. "You deserve this. You've earned a safe place. This is yours, as much as you want it to be." Mei Lin nodded, still processing the kindness she had received. She realized that this was more than just a roof over her head. It was a chance to rebuild her life with dignity. As she moved into the new cabin, Henry continued to support her quietly. He showed her how to organize her space, prepare meals efficiently, and even decorate with simple touches that reflected her personality. Mei Lin began to take pride in her home, arranging small plants, setting up a comfortable reading corner, and keeping the space clean and inviting. The cabin, once just a shelter, had become a symbol of safety, independence, and a fresh start. With this new stability, Mei Lin's confidence blossomed further. She began helping Henry with more challenging ranch tasks, learning to manage the livestock, repair fences, and even handle finances related to their work. Henry encouraged her at every step, treating her as a partner rather than a helper. This trust empowered her in ways she had never experienced before. She was no longer just surviving. She was contributing, learning, and growing. The local community started noticing Mei Lin more. Her quiet presence and her dedication to her work and neighbors earned respect. She began sharing her knowledge of simple gardening, cooking, and caring for animals with the children in the nearby town. They were fascinated by her stories of China, her patience, and the resilience she had demonstrated throughout her life. Slowly, she became a small, positive force in the community, quietly inspiring others with her strength and kindness. Henry, too, saw changes in himself. He had always been generous, but helping Mei Lin taught him patience, empathy, and the power of listening without judgment. He realized that kindness was not just about giving material help. It was about nurturing trust, respecting independence, and encouraging personal growth. Through their shared experiences, he had learned as much from her courage and resilience as she had learned from his support. One day, while tending the garden together, Mei Lin hesitated and then asked, "Henry, why do you help me so much? Why do you care?" Henry paused, considering her question. "Because you matter," he said simply. "Everyone deserves a chance to live with safety, dignity, and hope. And you? You've shown me how strong the human spirit can be. Helping you isn't a favor, it's a privilege." Maylin looked at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude, admiration, and something deeper. Trust that went beyond words. As autumn progressed, Henry and Maylin began planning small improvements to the ranch together. They repaired old barns, planted fruit trees, and created spaces where workers and visitors could feel welcome. Maylin's ideas were thoughtful and creative, reflecting her intelligence and her desire to contribute meaningfully. Henry encouraged her input, ensuring she felt valued and heard. Their teamwork strengthened not only the ranch, but also their bond, rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose. But life was not without challenges. One evening, a sudden storm caused flooding in one of the fields, threatening some of the livestock. Henry and Mei Lin worked tirelessly through the night, moving animals to safety and securing equipment. By dawn, they were exhausted but relieved. As they sat together, watching the rain taper off, Mei Lin spoke softly. "I never thought I could do this. Survive. Help like this." Henry placed a reassuring hand on hers. "You can do more than you realize, and you've proven it." The shared struggle deepened their connection, showing that trust and cooperation could overcome even the most unexpected difficulties. As the months passed, their partnership became stronger. Mei Lin's confidence grew, and she began dreaming about a future that once seemed impossible. She expressed interest in learning more about local culture, perhaps even taking classes in town. Henry supported her ambitions quietly, never pushing, always encouraging. He realized that giving someone opportunity was not just about providing resources, it was about fostering confidence, supporting dreams, and allowing space for personal growth. By the end of Part 4, Henry and Mei Lin had transformed both their lives. She had moved from isolation and fear into stability, purpose, and growing confidence. Henry had discovered the depth of his compassion and the joy of seeing someone flourish because of trust and patience. The broken cabin, once a symbol of hardship and struggle, had been replaced with a home full of safety, warmth, and hope. Their story was no longer just about survival. It was about resilience, empowerment, and the profound impact that kindness, trust, and respect can have on human life. And while the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Both Henry and Mei Lin had grown in ways they could never have imagined. Together, they had created a life built not on wealth or convenience, but on compassion, understanding, and the quiet strength of the human spirit. Their journey had reached a turning point, a stage where survival was no longer the goal. Now the goal was thriving, living fully and embracing the possibilities that life could offer. The first hints of winter arrived quietly, bringing a crispness to the air and a soft frost to the edges of the fields. Henry Caldwell's ranch had taken on a different life over the past months. It was no longer just a place of work and routine. It had become a home filled with shared purpose, small joys, and the steady rhythm of two lives growing together. For Henry, seeing Mei Lin thrive brought a sense of fulfillment he had never known. For Mei Lin, life had shifted from mere survival to hope, possibility, and a growing confidence in herself. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light over the fields, Henry approached Mei Lin with an idea he had been considering for some time. "Mei Lin," he began, "you've worked so hard, and you've grown so much. You've learned, you've contributed, and you've shared yourself with this place. I think it's time we do something bigger. I want to make your life even more secure. I want you to feel that this is truly yours, not just a safe place to live, but a home where you belong." Mei Lin looked at him, her eyes wide, her emotions quietly shifting between surprise, hope, and gratitude. She had never imagined someone would offer her such trust, such stability, or such respect. She had spent so many years living cautiously, never daring to dream of security or comfort. "Henry, I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I am grateful, more than I can explain." Henry smiled gently. "No need for words. I just want you to feel safe, valued, and free to live your life fully." In the days that followed, Henry took steps to formalize her place on the ranch. He worked with local authorities and neighbors quietly to ensure that she had legal protections, a secure home, and access to the resources she might need. For Mei Lin, these measures represented more than just security. They symbolized acceptance, respect, and a life free from fear. She realized she could now focus on growth, learning, and even contributing to the community without constantly worrying about survival. One afternoon, Henry invited Mei Lin to join him for a walk across the main fields. The sun was low in the sky, painting the hills in shades of gold and orange. Birds flew overhead, returning to their nests, and the ranch seemed at peace. As they walked, Henry spoke softly about the future. "I want you to have choices, Mei Lin," he said. "Not just here on the ranch, but in life. You can pursue whatever you wish. Learning, helping others, even traveling if you want. This is your life to shape." Mei Lin felt a rush of emotion. For the first time, she considered a future beyond the boundaries of her past hardships. She imagined herself learning new skills, meeting people, and even helping others who were struggling as she had once struggled. The thought filled her with courage and determination. I want to learn more," she said softly. I want to read, to understand, to help others. Then we will make it happen, step by step, together." In the weeks that followed, Mei Lin began taking steps toward her dreams. She attended local classes in reading, writing, and basic accounting. She began volunteering with nearby families, helping children learn about animals, gardening, and basic care. Her patience, intelligence, and calm demeanor made her a natural teacher, and the community quickly grew to admire her. For the first time in her life, she felt that she had a role in the world, not as a helpless outsider, but as someone whose skills, knowledge, and heart could make a difference. Henry continued to support her in quiet, thoughtful ways. He never imposed his plans on her. Instead, he created opportunities for her to take control of her own growth. He encouraged her to make decisions about the ranch, about the garden, and about her own future. This trust allowed her confidence to flourish further. Mei Lin began to smile more openly, laugh more freely, and share her thoughts without hesitation. The walls she had built around herself for protection over the years were slowly coming down, replaced by trust, hope, and a sense of belonging. One winter evening, as snow began to fall lightly across the fields, Henry and Mei Lin sat by a warm fire in her cabin. The soft glow illuminated their faces as they reflected on the months that had passed. Mei Lin spoke quietly. I never imagined life could be like this. I thought I would always be alone, always struggling. But now, I feel safe. I feel happy." Henry looked at her, his heart full. "You've earned it, Mei Lin. All of this is yours because of your strength, your courage, and the way you've trusted yourself and others. The moment was quiet, but full of meaning. Time began to spy the perfection of the world. Its patient was in the understanding, fear, and enjoying mental indulgence, and balanced in the adventure and nursing. The departure of another and fastened study in the world, Henry had not just helped her survive, he had helped her thrive. As the winter deepened, Henry and Mei Lin made plans to reach out to others who had experienced hardship. Inspired by her own journey, Mei Lin wanted to create opportunities for other vulnerable people in the community. Henry supported her ideas, helping her organize small programs for children and adults who needed guidance, education, or simply hope. Mei Lin found joy in giving back, realizing that her experiences, once a source of pain, could now serve as a beacon of inspiration and help for others. Their story began to spread quietly through the county. People who had doubted Mei Lin at first were now inspired by her courage, resilience, and contributions. Henry's patience, kindness, and wisdom also became well known, not as wealth or power, but as compassion and action. Their partnership became a model of how respect, trust, and patience could transform lives. One sunny morning, as the first snow melted from the fields and the promise of spring began to appear, Henry and Mei Lin walked together to the barn. The animals moved calmly around them, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the ranch seemed alive with possibility. Henry turned to her and said, "Mei Lin, look how far you've come. Look at what you've built, what you've learned, and the people you've touched. This is your life, your home, your world. And it's just the beginning." Mei Lin smiled, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and hope. She looked back at the cabin she had once called a home in the woods, a place of struggle and solitude, and realized how far she had come. That broken cabin had been the beginning of her journey, but now she had something greater: safety, respect, purpose, and a future she could shape with her own hands. As the sun rose higher, Henry and Mei Lin stood together, feeling the warmth of the day and the strength of their shared journey. They had faced hardship, uncertainty, and doubt, yet through patience, kindness, and courage, they had transformed not only their own lives, but the lives of those around them. Mei Lin had grown from a woman struggling to survive into someone who could live fully, contribute meaningfully, and inspire others. And Henry had learned that true wealth was not measured in money or land, but in the ability to change a life, to nurture trust, and to help someone discover their own strength. By the time winter gave way to spring once again, the ranch had become more than a place of work. It was a sanctuary of hope, growth, and human connection. Mei Lin's journey had reached a place of stability, empowerment, and promise.